So I've put a silly number of hours into Baldur's Gate 3, and in the time I've spent playing the game, I've learned a lot of things since I made my first tips video about the game, and I've learned a lot of things from you guys in the comments of my videos and just from lurking around on the interwebs. So today we are going to talk about 15 additional tips, I think it's 15, we'll find out, that newer or more casual players to the game should know for Baldur's Gate 3. Now, it will not shock me at all that if you've put hundreds of hours into the game and that you love it as much as I do, that you probably know every single one of these and even more. And that's perfectly fine, because my ask for you is if that you know everything that I talk about in this video, make sure to let everyone know down in the comments what other tips that you have that you've learned in the game. Let's make this sort of like a repository for all the newer and more casual players so they can be the best versions of themselves while playing Baldur's Gate 3. If you learn anything from this video or find any of it helpful, make sure to hit the like button. It makes me feel good to know that I'm providing you guys with some level of value. If you enjoy the video or you like me for some reason, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notifications for new videos like this. And while you're at it, comment down below on if you learned anything, what new things you found that are gonna help you with your playstyle, or once again, if you have any other tips you want to add, put those in the comments. If you don't have anything else to say, just comment your favorite emoji, because that comment goes towards engagement. It is a massive help to the channel, it helps other people find the video, and I greatly appreciate it. So with that out of the way, let's get to it. 15-ish tips for Baldur's Gate 3. For tip number 1, it's probably one that everyone already knows, but it's worth saying just in case someone doesn't, and that is a reminder that you can dip weapons in different surfaces to get an elemental effect on your weapons. One very handy trick is to carry a candle around with you should you find yourself lucky enough to find one inside of a chest or just lying in a container somewhere. You can drop the candle, dip your weapon in the candle, pick the candle back up, and boom, you have a fire weapon. It is worth noting though that you can't pick up just random candles that are lying on the ground. You have to find it inside of a container. It's also worth noting that if you do this, I would probably jump into turn-based mode pretty soon after doing that, so you get like the maximum effect of the fire element or whatever element you're dipping in before it runs out. Now, tip number 2 is going to sound like a really silly one and incredibly obvious, but hear me out on this. And that's going to be that you buy or steal, pickpocket, whatever you may, and keep every magic item in the game. Now, I know that seems really obvious and really stupid. Why does that even merit mentioning? And it could be because you make some of those mistakes that I made, which is like, oh, I don't need this item right now. I need to make room in my inventory for other things, or maybe you want to sell it so you can afford a different magic item. Which one? Steal things. But here's the crux of why I have found this to be important. It's because especially whenever I get to Act 3, I usually find myself getting a little bored of playing the same character I've been playing for Acts 1 and 2. I've put a ton of hours into this playstyle and it starts to get a little stale. And if you have saved all of your different magic items that help specific classes, you should now be able to seamlessly switch to any class and efficiently change your playstyle and not lose any effectiveness. I have unfortunately found myself making it to Act 3 and being like, man, being a monk sounds kind of fun, and then learning, oh crap, I sold all of my monk stuff in Act 2 that did unarmed stuff, and now I don't have that anymore. So again, it may seem really obvious, but just hoard onto those things because you never know if you might want to switch your class later on, and you'll be thankful that you still have those magic items. Tip number 3 is going to be make sure that you are pickpocketing efficiently, and one of the biggest parts of that is pickpocket while in turn-based mode. When you turn on turn-based mode, that is going to freeze everyone around you and enable you to pickpocket freely without having to worry about being caught. If you are in a densely populated area or just like a really crowded area, you can also have a sorcerer cast minor illusion somewhere, which will get everyone to start walking away, and then you can initiate turn-based mode and then sneak up behind them. Another thing you can do should you want to use the spell slots or the equipment is you can like shoot an arrow of darkness or cast darkness adjacent to the person so that you can hide in darkness so you're not seen, and then you can pickpocket them. Just be careful not to cast darkness on them lest you may piss them off and have them attack you. It's also worth mentioning that in Act 1, make sure you go visit the Zhentarim hideout and you buy the Gloves of Thievery. Or steal them, that would be ironic. It's an incredibly powerful Act 1 item that allows you to pickpocket very, very easily. Combine Astarion with the Gloves of Thievery with like guidance or bend luck, things like that that can buff your ability checks, and you would be shocked at how easily you can steal things. And for the next couple of tips, we're gonna talk about hirelings and making sure that we're using hirelings effectively. And I don't mean necessarily even bringing them around you in your party. If you are playing through a game and you never once recruit a hireling, even if you don't use them in your party, you are losing out on some really nice buffs. So for tip number 4, let's talk about one of your hirelings should maybe be a transmutation wizard. If neither you are Gale or a transmutation wizard, make one of your hirelings one, because then they can give you a transmuter stone. This can allow you to move faster, have dark vision, or be resistant to several different types of damage. And most importantly, they can give it to you, and then they don't have to be in your party, and that lasts until a long rest. So after every long rest, you can switch to them, add them to your party, give you a transmuter stone, and then kick them back out. A little rude, but hey, they're hirelings, they don't have souls anymore. The next one is going to be that make sure 1 or 2 of your hirelings are clerics. That's because clerics can give you some really nice spells that have effects that last until a long rest, and they don't have to be in your party for you to keep those buffs. A few of them worth noting are Freedom of Movement, Death Ward, and Hero's Feast. They cost spell slots, but guess what? If you want to bring Shadowheart with you, you can use their spell slots, and then it's not going to impact hers. And like I said, these will persist even after you kick them out of your party. For tip number 6, make sure when you go to deal with vendors or traders that you are initiating your trading with your highest charisma companion. That may or may not be your character, and that's okay. Pick whichever companion has the highest charisma possible and then initiate trading. That's because the discount, the amount of money that you get for selling things, and the amount at which you buy is determined by the charisma modifier of whoever initiates the trading. You can still go into other people's inventory and sell things out of their inventory. And the charisma modifier from whoever started the conversation will be the one that is used. You would notice that there is a big difference in how much you can sell things for and how much you can buy things for if you're using your sorcerer to do it versus someone like Shadowheart. Tip number 7, make sure that you remember that ritual spells do not cast a spell slot if you cast them outside of combat. So don't ever be afraid to talk to animals or talk to the dead because you're afraid you're going to waste a spell slot because it doesn't use one. Just make sure you're out of combat. Hell, even silence is a ritual spell, which is really nice if you want to pre-plant a silence before you get into combat. That way you can have silence out on the field and you don't have to spend a spell slot to do it. Very nice for the Grim fight in the Grimforge if you're not doing some owlbear shenanigans. For tip number 8, you may find yourself in the position where you have killed someone and you want to speak to them with Speak with the Dead. However, they're like, I don't want to talk to you because you killed me. If you didn't know, you can cast Disguise Self on yourself and that will trick the body into not knowing it was you, and then you can speak with them. If you don't have Disguise Self or don't want to waste a spell slot, if you bought the deluxe edition of the game, you get the Mask of Many Faces, which gives you the shapeshifter ability so that you can shapeshift to another race. This will have the same effect as Disguise Self. For tip number 9, this is a huge one if you play mostly on console like me. There is nothing that stresses me out in a video game more than a cluttered inventory and having to go through and do inventory management. So all of those backpacks, pouches, things that you pick up along the way or that people gift you, rewards in, you can put items into those to clean up your inventory. I'm sure there are mods for this, but if you play it on console like I do a majority of the time, then those may not be available to you. If you're on PC, you can just hold control, click the ones you want to do, and then just drag them and drop them into the container. And if you're playing on PS5, you can open the container, press R1 to go into trade mode, and then hold square to multi-select the items, and then just move them all over at once. Very easy way to have a clean inventory. Tip number 10 is gonna also sound maybe like a silly one, but don't forget that if you are using someone like a wizard or someone that has a very low strength score, and you're carrying a lot of loot, the first thing that you should do if you're trying to lessen your load, filter by camp supplies and make sure that you are sending all of your camp supplies to camp. There is absolutely no benefit to carrying them around. Whenever you go to long rest, it pulls them out of the traveler's chest, and that can be a very easy way to lighten your load so that you don't become encumbered. Tip number 11, if you have a character that has high dexterity or has the alert feat, what you can do is you can send them into combat if you're fairly certain that they are going to get the first round of initiative. And whenever that character initiates combat, that's going to freeze all of the enemies in that area. You can then take that opportunity to position your characters around in advantageous positions, like putting your wizard or your ranger up on like a cliff. You can send an Astariad behind someone, get a sneak attack, and then if he has Assassin's Initiative, then he gets to take another turn where he gets to sneak attack. You could also do some barrelmancy where you like set up barrels around while those people are frozen in initiative. You can do some pretty wacky things. For tip number, are we on 12? I think we're on 12, I'm not sure, I've kind of lost count. But make sure before you get into a battle, if you need to cast some spells to buff yourself or drink some potions, make sure that you go into turn-based mode either as you do this or immediately after you do it. It's because if you have any of these spells or effects that only last like 10 turns, you don't want those to be wasted while you're getting into combat or while you're taking turns getting your characters, buffed up. While you're in turn-based mode, those effects are not going to get spent passively. For tip number 13, make sure for someone like a rogue and I think a paladin, Uncanny Dodge, I know this is true for Uncanny Dodge for Rogue, it gets turned off automatically all the time. And I know that's because it's a reaction and they assume that maybe you don't want to react with Uncanny Dodge every time, but like, I'll just turn it off, guys, come on. But yeah, if you want to use Uncanny Dodge, make sure you're checking that Uncanny Dodge passive to make sure that it's turned on. Otherwise, you may find yourself wanting that and it's actually turned off. I think the similar thing happens with paladins with their auras, those just automatically turn off. For tip number 14, remember that characters that are grouped together in sequential order in initiative can take turns interchangeably. So for example, if Gale is supposed to go and then Lysel immediately after, and you want Lysel to throw a grease bottle so that Gale can cast Firebolt on it, you can actually do those things interchangeably. You don't have to have Gale go first. It's very convenient. So remember, if you have characters that are in sequential order, you can use them interchangeably. And finally, this may sound silly, but for the last tip, make sure that you're examining your enemies before or during combat. I know it sounds silly, but especially in honor mode, if you're doing that for the first time, examine your enemies to see what their resistances are, what their weaknesses are, and very importantly, what are their legendary actions. If you don't examine Grim and you start fighting him, boy, are you in for a world of hurt when he just blasts you with thunder damage when you deal damage to him. Or you go to fight Ornn and she's got like 5 billion stacks of Unstoppable and you're like, ah crap, I should have read that first. And maybe spammed some magic missile on her. So get yourself in the habit of checking that examine screen on enemies unless it's a completely minor fight. Especially in a game mode where it's permadeath, you'll thank me later, make sure you're checking that examine screen. All right guys, that's everything I've got for you today. Was any of this helpful? Let me know down in the comments. And if nothing that was news to you, let everyone else know your tips to help everyone else out. And if you don't have anything to say, just comment your favorite emoji because remember it goes towards engagement, it helps other people find the video, and I would greatly appreciate it. If you found the video helpful, make sure to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and the notification bell so you get notifications of videos like this and live streams. Thank you guys for watching, good luck in Baldur's Gate 3, and we will see you in a later video or live stream. Have a great day.